Another year has come and gone, another year full of good and great as well as pretty bad and awful games. AAA business practices were as awful as ever, marketing people still have been out of touch with consumers, but content-wise, a lot of good has happened as well. Successful continuations of established IPs, creative or unique new ideas. Some really neat remakes or remasters brought older games to a new audience, and there have also been some really good DLCs released this year. I want to use this occasion, once again, to highlight some of the games that really made an impact on me this year. The ones I enjoyed the most, or maybe were of exceptional quality, or maybe just were exceptional in one specific area. And as a disclaimer, I of course wasn't able to play every game this year, and that includes high-profile releases, so some games expected on this list just won't appear on it. Like Plague Tale Requiem, which I didn't play because I haven't gotten around finishing the first one yet. Or God of War Ragnarok, where I haven't gotten around finishing the first one yet. The first one. Or Horizon Forbidden West, which was fine gameplay-wise and offered a rather beautiful game world, but I just couldn't stand Aloy, so I just stopped playing. So yeah, before this goes on for too long, let's just take a look at my favorite games of 2022. The Callisto Protocol. And we're gonna start off this list with a game I was initially unsure about, and I'm still torn about. The Callisto Protocol is a very flawed game and has been a disappointment for a lot of people. A bit like Scorn earlier this year. But not for me. I see all the flaws and poorly conceived mechanics, but to me there's just something genuine about this game. A bit like Scorn earlier this year. It seems to me that the game was made by people who really wanted to create a video game. This might sound stupid because what else would they have wanted to do, but keep in mind how formulaic a lot of AAA games have become these days. This game could have just copied Dead Space to a T and people would have celebrated it for that. But instead the devs tried a different approach. Give the game its own identity. You still see the influence Dead Space had on many of this game's elements, but instead of being just a copy, a clone or rip-off, it had its own identity, flaws and all. It also helps that the atmosphere is thick in this game, and the cramped hallways, the superb sound design, the unstable and stressful lighting, and the gruesome monster designs really make this a horrifying experience. And something else to still your horror appetite released with the Shadow of Rose DLC for Resident Evil 8, a game that was as fun as it was disappointing to me. 16 years after the end of Resident Evil 8, we return as Rosemary Winters, Ethan's daughter, to the small Romanian village. Well, not really. All this is more in Rose's head, or more accurate, inside the memories collected by the Megamycete. You're revisiting all the important locations from the main campaign, but now they're in a corrupted state. Recurring characters behave differently, and while Rose uses handguns and rifles just like Ethan did, she also gets to use magical powers, which, fun it may be, just reinforces my beliefs that this game should have been a modern times Castlevania and not a Resident Evil game. That said, the game manages to get a lot out of the reused assets and locations and craft some really engaging scenarios. Another good example of a DLC well done. It also added the third-person camera from Rose's campaign to the main game, which is a highly appreciated icing on the cake. And with the upcoming VR mode for the PSVR 2, I really have to commend the devs for adding so many, let's call them playstyles to the game. Even if I was really pissed off by its story and characters and its impact on the Resident Evil lore. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Triangle Strategy. Even though the games aren't really connected to one another, to me this game will always be the Octopath Traveler strategy spin-off. I mean, both were developed under Square Enix, both use this 3D bit style and both have their storytelling gimmick in the title. Octopath Traveler with the 8 playable stories and Triangle Strategy with the 3 political main players in this world. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but that was what got me interested in the game in the first place. And I'm glad it did. The, at least for a little while longer, unique and incredible art style aside, The game appears like any other Japanese strategy RPG, but there's more to it. The story itself is rather dark and without much humor, with moments that would fit right into a Song of Ice and Fire. It's all about political arrangements, intrigue and betrayal, all accompanied by a quite extensive lore. That's not all that tight. It just goes to show that it's not an easy task to create a whole world with its own history from scratch. But the story itself isn't the important thing to me right now, no matter how intriguing it might be. But at certain points during the story, you have to make decisions that lead to different missions, have you meet and recruit different characters and influence the events of this conflict. The system isn't too complex. Over the course of a chapter, you have on multiple occasions the chance to learn about interesting facts about the world, as well as your comrades' wants and needs and beliefs. As soon as you arrive at a narrative crossroads, your closest friends will take a vote on how to proceed, and you can, and have to, use the knowledge you gained to influence their individual decisions. So that's the story side of things, but where the game truly shines is in the actual strategy gameplay. Combat is action controlled. You can move before or after taking an action, and use standard or special abilities that cost action points, which slowly regenerate each turn. So far, so standard. Positioning is important because you are guaranteed a critical hit when attacking from the back, but so are the enemy units, so be careful about where your units face at all times. You also really want to flank your opponents because then you trigger follow-up attacks to inflict even more damage. Archers receive attack bonuses when shooting from a higher elevation. Magic spells can affect the environment and open up new strategic opportunities. There is so much to utilize during combat in this game, but at the same time, the game wants you to also specialize for any encounter. Every unit is a unique fighter. Mages are generally only proficient in one element, so different mages give access to different kinds of spells. One fighter might excel in powerful attack abilities, while the other has some really good buffs, and the next one is the perfect choice for crowd control. It's not just a matter of bringing a mage, a melee fighter, a ranger and a healer with you. One healer might be more suited for a certain battle than another. There's a lot of depth to be found in this game, and I highly appreciate it. It's just fun to experiment with all the different compositions. And it stands shoulder to shoulder with classics like Tactics Ogre, for example, which incidentally got a remaster this year, so if you thirst for more strategy RPGs, you might want to take a look at it. Dying Light 2. I am a sucker for zombie games, be it survival, action or outright horror. When Dead Island hit the shelves some years ago, I was completely on board, flawed as it may have been. But just the concept of an open world RPG focused entirely on a zombie outbreak just hit all the right buttons for me. And while the game had many issues, the standard zombies were everything you'd want from them. The first Dying Light polished many of the mechanics and elements and set the game in a fictional city in Turkey that was the perfect background for its conspiracy story and the perfect playground for the fast parkour gameplay and exhilarating zombie action in the narrow streets of this huge city. Dying Light 2 expands on the exploration and free roaming gameplay. Villedor offers a lot more variety, visually with the different building styles, but also gameplay wise. There's a lot more to find both inside the buildings and out on the streets. There's an even greater focus on verticality as soon as you reach the inner city and get access to your paraglider. Combat has a lot more weight to it than in previous games, and you get access to a bunch of different weapons and abilities to diversify the combat even more than before. The story is complete bullshit and you shouldn't think too much about the consequences of the faction mechanics. But the atmosphere in this game is top notch, and the parkour demands just enough skill to feel rewarding while still being intuitive and fun, and the combat feels meaty and brutal, just how it should. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Kirby's first fully 3D outing has been a complete success. The game is still what you expect from Kirby: fluffy, colorful enemies, tons of equipable special abilities, and platforming that isn't too demanding thanks to Kirby's ability to fly. But with the added Z-axis, there are now more ways the player can approach any challenge, and more ways challenges can be designed around. The levels themselves are still linear affairs, kinda like in Mario 3D World. Kirby starts at one point and has to traverse an enemy gauntlet to find the exit. Sometimes the levels are tight corridors and focus more on platforming, but others can be huge and open. And they hide tons of little secrets, some useful health items, coins to spend on a variety of services in the little town that acts as Kirby's home base, or collectibles you need to find to further expand the town or unlock better weapons and some extras. Every level throws something new or unexpected your way, and each new area provides a completely new visual style and feeling. There are empty, overgrown cities, desert ruins, a fun fair, or a frozen, abandoned subway station. The team went all out to make this milestone for Kirby feel even more special. This is a great addition to the Kirby franchise and an awesome 3D action platformer in its own right. I mean, you can turn into a fucking car, what else do you want? Metal Hellsinger. Hell yeah, this game rocks! Imagine Doom as a rhythm game, full of metal, violence and high-octane action. You are the unknown, a soul trapped in hell who was bereft of her voice, so now she sings through the screams of pain of all the demons foolish enough to stand in her way. This game has just so much style and works incredibly well. Everything has a rhythm to it, which might sound like a no-brainer in a rhythm game, but it is executed so damn well, it's really commendable. Your weapon's attack speed and reload animations are timed perfectly so that attacking on beat becomes second nature. Enemies rhythmically switch between roaming around or approaching you and attacking. Your weakest weapon, a flame-spewing skull, is still incredibly useful because A, it doesn't use up any ammo, and B, keeps your combo streak going. You don't have to attack on every beat, but when you don't attack at all for a time, your multiplier will slowly decrease, but with your magic skull, you can keep the combo going and hold on to all the benefits, as well as keep the music going in its best possible version. Because when you're at the maximum multiplier of 16 times, the vocals of the amazing background music trigger and let you enjoy the carnage even more. In my case, especially with the inclusion of Serge Tankian from System of a Down, my favorite band. The game is mostly an arena shooter with smaller linear pathways in between. There's not really any exploration and not much to find other than combo or damage upgrades within the arenas. The game doesn't want you to take it slow, it wants you to dance to its beat, to get into the groove, to let the metal flow through you and slaughter demons to your heart's content. A great concept executed amazingly and a must play for any metalhead. Rock on! Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. What? A turn-based tactics game featuring Mario and the silly Rayman Rabbids, and where Mario wields a gun, Luigi takes out enemies from afar as a sniper, and the Princess Peach causes high levels of destruction with a shotgun? Well, that's nothing new, we already had this game a few years ago. So to give us a reason to buy into it again, the developers made everything greater, more polished, more ludicrous. Now, an Insomniac Rosalina lookalike picks off enemies with a machine gun, and a new and original dark and brooding rabbit wields a giant sword straight out of Final Fantasy. The sequel traded the XCOM-like system for a more arcade-like gameplay, with lots more chaos that still requires a careful and strategic approach. The story is more fleshed out with better characters that are creatively designed and gorgeously animated. There's way more flexibility and customization with all the different character abilities as well as equipable special abilities. And everything looks and sounds so amazing. The soundtrack especially deserves mention, with Yoko Shimomura from Kingdom Hearts and Grant Kirkhope from Banjo-Kazooie at the helm, as well as Gareth Coker from Ori and the Blind Forest. This isn't just more of the same, it's more and better, and I still can't believe how amazing a game featuring those stupid Rabbids manages to be. It doesn't have any right to be so awesome. Return to Monkey Island. The existence of this game is nothing short of a miracle. More than 3 decades after Monkey Island 2 and Ron Gilbert's departure from LucasArts, he is back at it again, not with a spiritual successor, not with a brand-free continuation, but with an actual sequel to his own all-time classic. The game is full of charm and wit, as you'd expect from Monkey Island or Ron Gilbert. The gameplay is streamlined without becoming too mindless. You still have to collect items and manually use them in the correct situation, with just a sliver of moon logic, though to be fair, nothing seems too far out, and I guess how intuitive or easy or hard some puzzles are comes down to each individual player. There aren't too many locations, characters or items to keep track of in any of the chapters, so even if you get stuck, brute forcing your way through a puzzle is a viable option, and if this still doesn't help, the game is nice enough to drop a hint book into your inventory. A huge point of contention with this game was the art style, and I do understand wanting a similar pixel art style to the original game. Something Gilbert has already recreated, kinda, with Thimbleweed Park a few years ago. I am a sucker for pixel art, and I would have loved for this game to be in that style, or at least give the option to use pixel art. That said, I really like this art style. It's expressive, colorful, and not something you see all too often. And it fits this game really well. I understand being disappointed, but the game didn't deserve the amount of hate it got just because of the art design. This game is a real treat for fans of classic adventure games, and those with less experience in the genre will find a good jump-in point with the game, even though it is quite full of references and fan service. But still, Ron Gilbert and his team proved once more their talent and that classic adventure games still have a place in the modern gaming landscape. A different kind of adventure game is Lost in Play, a beautifully animated game where you play 2 siblings who are, well, lost in their play. From how it looks, it reminds me a lot of humongous entertainment games like Freddy Fish or Pajama Sam. Just like the studio made an adaptation of Over the Garden Wall. This game depicts a whimsical children's fantasy with silly bearded fairy guys and mischievous frogs. The game is comprised of a bunch of smaller, isolated puzzles that don't interconnect with each other, but this perfectly mimics the theme of this game, with the children stumbling from one wondrous situation into another, and having to solve rather goofy riddles. A wonderful little game that you can just get lost in for a few hours. Pentiment. This came as a bit of a surprise to me. I mean, the art style already intrigued me and I knew I'd want to try it, but I'd never have thought I enjoyed it that much. So this game is like an adventure game with some character roleplay made by the genius designers over at Obsidians. The game looks like medieval illustrations come to life and takes place during the Renaissance in Bavaria in the Holy Roman Empire. You are a journeyman painter who works at a monastery copying books and finishing his masterpiece. You get to meet your neighbors, learn more about them through friendly conversations just on the street or over a meal. You have to adhere to a strict timetable that dictates when to work, when to eat and when to sleep. Ora et labora, bitches. The game does its best to present this setting as accurately as possible, with the way people speak and behave, with references to actual real-world events, most prominently Martin Luther publishing his thesis, and with a strong focus on both religion and superstition. During your stay at the monastery, a murder occurs and you can help to find the killer, and here the ingenious role-playing elements come into play. Instead of distributing skill points to different skills, In this game you only decide on your character's background. Where did he travel to during his wandering years? What did he study in university? These decisions open up specific dialogue options that are sometimes more and sometimes less helpful. These aren't simply bonuses, but more flavors, quirks your character has. Just because a dialogue option related to your character's background pops up, doesn't mean it's always helpful or the best possible option. Choosing it can sometimes even hurt your cause. This gives conversations, the main activity in this game, so much depth, and it helps that the game accounts for most of your decisions. The game remarks on you having changed your mind over the course of a conversation, or if you stayed the course. This isn't a game where flip-flopping around to be in high standing with everyone does you any favors. The game systems incentivize finding a preferred playstyle and sticking with it, and just let the story develop around it. You might not get everything right on your first attempt, but it will always be interesting and engaging. This is the best kind of character roleplay, and I hope to see more in that style. Elden Ring. This game is just amazing. Elden Ring is the logical endpoint of this whole Souls-like concept that no one outside of From Software seems to wholly comprehend. Everything we know from Demon and Dark Souls and all the others is still here, but in addition to that, in harmony with that, is a massive open world full of mysteries and secrets, full of beautiful vistas or desolated horrorscapes, and full of freedom. You once again play a nameless unknown adventurer, traveling a doomed world inhabited only by madmen and abominations. As is tradition, all the big events have already happened and all we can discover of it are legends and fairy tales. Whenever you are in a dungeon or a similar structure like a castle or temple, pretty much any area designed around you, opening doors and gates and fight a boss at the end, the game feels distinctively like Dark Souls, with a gameplay almost identically to it, with slow and methodic combat structured around fast and heavy attacks, dodge rolling or parrying while managing a stamina meter. Equip weight affects the speed of your dodge roll, you can choose to hold any weapon with both hands for extra damage and a chance to stagger enemies or break through their blocks, you can equip different kinds of magic, upgrade your equipment and juggle way too many stats in overly complicated fashion. Souls veterans will feel right at home, but for newcomers, this game is as cryptic as any other Souls game. It still is the most accessible Souls game. While attribute or weapon upgrades are still permanent, the latter even using limited resources, most of the other mechanics, especially the new ones, invite you to experiment without the fear of permanently losing access to other, better options. You can now find Ashes of War, which provide your weapon with special effects and even alternate attacks, and those can be equipped and unequipped at any checkpoint, which are around every corner in this game. Then there are monster summons that you equip and use like magic spells, though you can't use them anywhere, but just in certain places, mostly in boss arenas. The vast open world contains a million resources that, thankfully, can be picked up instantly without needing to stop running or riding your horse, that you get to more easily travel this giant world. And you can use all those resources to craft helpful items, which is completely optional and you miss nothing for not engaging with this system. In fact, many of the new mechanics are completely missable. If you decide not to follow the critical path at the beginning of the game but just wander off in any other direction, you might not get access to the horse, or summoning, or crafting. You can still get it later, but it's not unheard of that players played the game for hours on end without even knowing about these mechanics. Don't want to tackle the first actual level on your way or got too frustrated with the first story boss? Just walk past it. It might not be obvious from the start, but observant players can find ways around most mandatory appearing challenges. In fact, the game just wants you to defeat 2 of the 5 shard bearers to enter the endgame area. And if you're stuck on a boss, just leave it for later. Go explore for an hour or 2 or 20 and come back after having leveled up a few times and gotten some better equipment and, well, actual experience with the game. This is one of the first things the game tries to teach the player, if they follow the critical path, that is. And that's what makes this game so amazing. Everything that was already great in Dark Souls is still here. well, the bosses might be a bit more bullshitty and it's a lot easier to find game-breakingly powerful abilities, without warning. But the sense of freedom and exploration is so powerful in this game, only rivaled maybe by Breath of the Wild, which might be the highest compliment this open world could get from me. A niche game for sure, but worth a try for everyone. Moving on to something completely different.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge. Oh, I was really looking forward to this game, and I wasn't disappointed. The game really captured the spirit of the old arcade brawlers, especially the game's very own predecessors, and packaged it into a smooth modern gaming experience. It follows the example of games like Shovel Knight or A Hat in Time in how it feels the way you remember the classics, like it was playable nostalgia. The game features amazing pixel art, both in the incredibly detailed level backgrounds as well as in the elaborate animations of both the protagonists and the many different enemies. Be it idle animations, taunts and victory poses, the many different activities the Foot Clan ninjas are up to when they are not busy fighting the turtles, and of course, all the different attacks. Fighting feels better than ever with a lot of attack variety. You can play as any of the 4 turtles as well as Sensei Splinter, April O'Neil and even Casey Jones. And while every character has the same basic controls, each of them differs a bit in attack speed and reach. By just hitting the attack button you perform a satisfying combo chain, but you can also charge up your attack for a block breaker. You can perform a ram attack with a running start, 2 different jump attacks depending on when you perform it during the jump arc, and even a rising kick when hitting the attack and jump button at the same time. You can execute a counter attack after a dodge maneuver, grab and throw enemies, or accumulate power for different ultimate attacks that you learn by raising the level of a particular character. There are so many approaches to any combat situation, not just because of this incredible attack variety, but also in how well all the enemies are designed. They all have their own little quirks and attack types that require different approaches. Some of them block all of your attacks, some can shoot at you, some charge up their attacks, some throw deflectable objects at you, and there are many more. They all telegraph their attacks appropriately, so the game doesn't need to devolve into mindless button mashing. While the game isn't too long, it offers a lot of content. I wouldn't call it short, instead, that it doesn't overstay its welcome. But you get to play in a bunch of different environments that all end in a boss fight against one of the many iconic Turtles bad guys, and you don't even have to do it all on your own, but can join forces with up to 5 other players in online multiplayer and even couch co-op to wreck the Foot Clan's shit. The replay value of this game is high for me, for one because of the little challenges in every level, but more just for the amount of fun I get out of playing all these great levels, taking part in these exhilarating fights that look just awesome and are accompanied by a soundtrack like no other. Some tracks try and succeed in recreating the style of the classic tracks from the arcade, and others are tubular rock and hip hop songs that wouldn't be out of place in one of the cartoon shows. This game instantly became one of my all-time favorites, and I knew from the start that this would be my game of the year, just for the sheer amount of fun I got out of it. And sometimes that's all you need. And of course, these weren't all the good games released in 2022. There were a lot more great or entertaining or engaging games, like Justin Roiland's new shooter High on Life, the Shovel Knight roguelike spin-off, or the Souls-like set during the French Revolution, Steel Rising, and even massive DLCs like Mario Kart 8's new racing tracks or Cuphead's delicious last course, which could have been standalone games in their own right. But I have to draw the line somewhere. Just keep in mind that this year, same as every year, a lot of good things have happened, so try to not get too hung up on the negatives. And with that said, have an awesome year 2023, with lots of great games and that all your aspirations come to fruition. That's it from Rady, and I wish you all the best, and of course, I hope to see you again next year on another game.